So we're here today with Devin Montgomery, the founder and creator of the Backcountry boiler. Devin, thanks a lot for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
You bet, man. You bet. And for people that don't know, what is the Backcountry boiler?
Yeah, so the backcountry boiler is a chimney kettle, which is a kettle, so a device for boiling water, with an internal chimney where you make a little fire and it heats water that's in a jacket around that chimney, and it heats it pretty efficiently. You can use anything from little sticks to pine cones, stuff like that. It protects the
Gotcha.
fire from the wind. So yeah, that's basically what it is.
That's pretty cool. So, what are really the primary uses of it? I guess in terms of, what kinds of foods would you recommend people cook with it?
Yeah, so part of the reason that I started looking into chimney kettles and making a light one was that when I go backpacking, I make primarily either dehydrated meals or boil only meals. So to be honest, most of my trail diet consists of oatmeal in the morning and ramen noodles or some derivative at night.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't do a lot of fancy gourmet stuff. So this just really quickly boils the water that you can use to make meals like that, or the morning coffee or tea or whatever.
I'm a huge fan of Easy Mac, and
Yeah,
so I think that the boiler should do the trick there as well, right?
yeah, I'm sure it would.
So, what made you decide to invent the boiler?
Yeah, so the basic chimney kettle design had been around for a long time. Um, for instance, it was used by some Irish army in the early 20th century, but all of those old designs were pretty big and heavy. And I've been talking with some other people on an online forum, and we just kind of figured that something that was lighter and easier to carry around, was possible.
Okay.
So I started looking into different ways that you would make something like this. Got into I sort of learned a craft called metal spinning,
Yeah.
and through a lot of trial and error, made the first prototype.
Yeah. So, how did that work? If I'm remembering correctly, when I was at your site, which is theboilerworks.com,
Hmm.
works with an E, which I like. You bought a metal lathe and were building this thing on your back porch, the first prototype. Is that right?
Yeah, that's so it is kind of funny. It means that we might be German. We're not, but we might be.
All right.
But yeah. So I actually started out with a wood lathe, because you can actually convert a pretty basic wood lathe into to do some basic metal spinning. But
Okay.
I needed something that was a little bit more robust. So I got this sort of small antique metal lathe, and sort of I had a couple DVDs, and I taught myself how to do metal spinning, and yeah, I started just making the first few on my back porch.
Oh, very cool. So, talk about the progression from the first one being made on your porch all the way to the boiler that's being produced today.
Right. Yeah. So the very first ones that I made were actually, this was even before the lathe. I had designed this in SketchUp, actually a little CAD program that Google makes.
Oh, okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah. So I knew how I wanted it to look, and I actually sort of put one together with this high temperature epoxy, to sort of see what thickness metal I would need, stuff like that. Sort of mock it up,
Yeah.
make a functional mock up. And then I started, doing metal spinning, and I was actually going to start. I was going to produce these on my back porch, like just that's how I was going to make them.
Hmm.
But surprisingly or not, it's actually pretty tough to go into sort of like serious manufacturing
Yeah.
on your back porch, open to the weather and all the stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I designed it. I had actually gone to some manufacturers and to see if they could make one to the specifications that I wanted. But when I first did that, basically they all told me it couldn't be made as light as I wanted it to be.
Hmm.
So that's why I sort of started making them myself. And what was really good about going through that process and learning how to make it myself was that I learned a lot of techniques about how I could make it really lightweight, using established manufacturing techniques. So then when I went back to them saying, here's what I've made on my back porch. I've made a few, but can you make a bunch? That conversation was a lot more productive. And so the one that's being made today, it's a little bit heavier. It's a couple ounces heavier, but it's also a couple ounces more robust, which I think for a lot of users is a benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And and there's some really other sort of small details about the way in which it's different, but by and large, what is the Backcountry boiler today is basically what I designed in SketchUp, so long ago, and so it's really cool to see it, actually in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. How many, and let's say, not necessarily prototypes that you've had for yourself, but how many boilers have been produced that you have sold to the market so far?
Right. Yeah. So there are about 250 Backcountry boilers that people actually have and are using. And actually with this Kickstarter campaign that I'm doing right now, there are about another 500 to 600 that people have put in orders for, and I'm expecting probably another 50 to 100 by the time that funding closes on June 10th.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little more, because I think it's a really unique story. We actually first heard about you from one of our buddies, a fan of the show, a guy named Tim, who is on the Backpacking Light forums a lot and gives us heads up from time to time about new cool products that we should look into, and that's how we came to know about it. And cool. If I'm correct, the Backpacking Light forums, really you almost worked hand in hand with some of the people in that community. Is that somewhat correct?
Yeah, so that's where when I sort of had this idea, that's where I first put, hey, I'm thinking about, trying to make this. And at that point I was like, gosh, if I'm going to invest in a lathe and stuff like this, I would really like to be able to pay off that lathe. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, if I do this, would a couple of you guys, want one? And, it sort of, went through that whole process. And a lot of the guys, people were really just super supportive. They thought it was, a really cool idea. And they said, yeah, you should keep working on that, which was great, for all the times that things were looking kind of meek as far as the future of it actually, coming out the other side.
Yeah.
But I'd say, as far as like design goes, that was, that was something that I did. And I know for a fact there are a lot of features that folks on there, a couple guys wanted a whistle on it, and some people wanted some other stuff that I might look into in the future. But from a design point of view, it was probably mostly me. But as far as being part of the engine that helped me keep going through all of the difficulties, yeah, totally. That that forum, as well as once I actually had some that were available, the degree to which people on Backpacking Light and this forum called Hammock Forums, they just really spread the word about it and really helped make it something that was more than just one that I made for myself.
Very cool. Yeah, and I could only imagine it kind of served as a proving ground for the viability of this as a business.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, just to see all those people that really got excited about the product, because I know from the research I've done on it that those things didn't last long. When you say there's some for sale, they're gone pretty damn quick, right? Yeah. So that's something I've definitely learned. It's tricky to make things on your back porch, just yourself. Yeah. But there are the logistics are a lot simpler than when you have to work with a whole bunch of suppliers. Sure. And sort of translate your method and your design into something that they can do. Yeah. So along those lines, as you're moving more towards ramping up production and moving forward with bigger distribution and all those things, talk a little bit more about the Kickstarter campaign that you mentioned, and what exactly are you doing with that campaign? How much are you raising? What are you going to be doing with the funds? How long can people get into it? All that stuff.
Yeah, right on. So Kickstarter, I don't know if everyone in the audience knows what it is, but Kickstarter is pretty cool. It's what it is it's called a crowdfunding platform.
Mm-hmm.
And what crowdfunding is, crowdfunding is basically what I did with my first batch before Kickstarter anyway. Crowdfunding is taking the, you need capital to do a big project,
Mm-hmm.
like the boiler. Like when I'm going to manufacturers, minimum affordable runs are like, 250, 500, 1,000. So you're talking about some pretty serious dough, the kind of dough that a recent grad student like myself doesn't have just sitting around.
Right.
And so, your traditional funding sources would be either, debt or equity, right? So you'd either, you go to a bank and try to get a business loan,
Right.
or, you try to get some private investors. And small business loans in the past few years have been, pretty hard to get. And, there's a whole host of other concerns that you have about, getting other private equity involved. You lose control of, what you want to, your vision to be.
Yeah.
So what's really great about crowdfunding is that essentially by placing pre-orders, by people saying, we'll give you this money now if you deliver, the product, a few months from now or something like that. By placing those pre-orders, it not only gives you the capital to make those big expenditures in tooling and stuff like that for the item to be made, but it also, attests to the fact that there's market demand for it, which can really help you, down the line.
Yep.
And what I think is really cool about it is this gets kind of sappy, but like the bond that it makes between the person who's making something and the people who are buying it. Because I've backed projects on Kickstarter, and when that project is carried out, you feel like you're part of it.
Absolutely.
It's a sort of a more, for me, a more exciting experience than just going to a store and buying something.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's what I think is neat about it. So given, the history of this project, which was in an online forum, and, how I essentially got a bunch of pre-orders to make that first batch,
Yep.
I thought the Kickstarter would be a really great place, a really good fit, for the second batch. So let's see, 2 weeks ago? About 2.5 weeks ago, I opened up the Kickstarter campaign, and it has been doing really, really well. There are a bunch of people who had been waiting a long time to be able to order one. So I hit my goal, which was $20,000. I hit that goal in about a little bit over 2 days.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Which was just really, really amazing.
Yeah.
And since then, I've gotten a bunch more orders. I think I'm up to something like $50,000 in funding now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, which is about almost like 500 boilers.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really cool. And so if folks watching this, it should still be open. Funding closes on June 10th, and it's a chance for them. They should go out. They should go on and check it out. They can get a super good deal on a backcountry boiler, and be part of it.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, congratulations. That's a huge success. I mean, $50,000 in funding from this. So, with all that success, have you seen? What's the right way to put it? Have you been gaining additional attention from people that are saying, let's take this thing out to a broader market and maybe build 10,000 of these things or anything to that effect going on?
Yeah, so I have. I've been getting a lot of inquiries from of actually all sorts. It's pretty interesting. Some probably more serious than others.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, but I'm definitely interested in in trying to make this available to more people. Part of what I've been
very cool, because I know people will see this interview after June 10th and are probably going to be wondering, how can I get my hands on mine? So there are plans to continue making these for some time, right?
Yeah, totally. And what I'd like to do is I know some are going to be available for me directly, but I'd also like to and sort of am talking to and will be talking to some larger retailers that have sort of philosophies that are compatible with mine, to make these a little bit easier to get than the wait a long time that has been what it's been up to this point.
That's awesome. So what are some of the things that people maybe can look for from your company, Boiler Works, in the future? You've been talking or thinking about any other products, or are you just totally focused on the boiler right now?
Yeah, so trying to stay as focused on the boiler right now as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my work cut out for me.
Yeah, true.
Once funding on this Kickstarter project closes, I'm going to have a lot of boilers that I need to get out to people quickly. But longer term, I'm probably going to make maybe some accessories for the boiler.
Hmm.
People have expressed a lot of interest in having an alcohol burner for it. So if you're in a fire restricted area or above the tree line where there just isn't anything to burn, making a little insert that you could use, alcohol for instance.
Hmm.
Maybe some other accessories, but what I definitely want to do in sort of the longer term is sort of do more things with fire. Maybe work on some other kinds of stoves, because I think it's a pretty neat area to work in.
Yeah.
You learn some neat skills in doing sort of the different kinds of metal fabrication that it requires, and for me, backpacking stoves or camping stoves are sort of campfire stand-ins.
Yeah.
And so they should have that aspect of sort of fire and fun, and it's something I want to work more with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a very cool product. I'm excited to use it. I know that from all of the what's the right word for it? All of the praise that you've been getting on the internet is and all of the great feedback has really been well founded. Big congrats on the success of the Kickstarter campaign, and pretty excited to see where you go with this thing. And again, appreciate having you on the show.
Well, thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me, and I enjoy watching your show. Like I think I've said before, I want to see more of those factory tours.
Yeah, I know.
Those are cool.
I want to do more of them, so hopefully we'll get some more lined up soon. But as always, I'm Josh. This is Devin, and we are campinggeartv.com.